Alright, hello YouTube. In this video I'm going to be showing you this amp, which I've actually got right next to my computer as I'm doing this. I'm going to show it to you in a bit, but first I just want to say I might make a series about this. I don't have much of a series yet because I don't have enough guitars or amps to make a continuing theme, but I'll see how it goes, and if it's really good I'll make a series out of it. So hit the like button, please subscribe, let's get into the video. This is the amp in question. It's a Vox AV15 amplifier. It's sort of a hybrid-y thing. It's described as an analog valve, and I'm not quite sure what that means, but there's a valve in the end. I don't know if you can see it. I'll probably... yeah, there you are, you can see that. Sorry about the microphone. But let's talk about this a little bit. So the AV15 is an analog valve amplifier. I've just gone onto Vox's website and checked. I'm correct. It's got 8 channels. It's got 2 cleans, 2 crunches, 2 overdrives, and like 2 high gains, which I don't use very often because these days I'm more of a jazz player and a bit of blues and rock and roll, but hey. As the 15 on the end describes, it's a 15 watt amplifier, and it's powered by one 12AX7 tube in, I don't know, I think it's a preamp. I think it's a preamp tube. Don't hold me up on that. But it's about £160, that's what I got mine for. Don't know if I was scammed. And it uses about 30 watts of power, and it weighs about 8 kilograms. Now my opinion on this amp varies quite a lot, because it's quite a versatile amp, but it's sort of a bit of a jack of all trades and master of none, if you know what I mean, because it's got 8 channels, sure, it's got a valve, it's got all the normal EQ, you know, treble, middle, bass. It's got a couple of effects. There's reverb, delay, and chorus. I think they call it modulation, so that's sort of chorus, flange, and all of that stuff. It's got gain and power level and 4 switches, which sort of affect the sound, but not really. Which is really good if you're sort of like a gigging, working musician and you want an amp to take around with you. But it's not so good if you're really into one thing, that thing being, I don't know, for example, jazz, because that's the thing I think it does least well. By least well, I mean it still does it, but we'll get onto that later. And I say it doesn't do jazz that well because it's, I don't know, just judging by the number of channels and what they are, I reckon it's more of a gainy amp. And the fact it has a valve in it, I think, points it slightly more towards the gain side, because most jazz amps these days are solid state. For instance, the little AER amps, the Compact 40 and 60, they're some of the best jazz amps I've ever seen that have come about as of modern time. I think the old Fender Deluxes were quite good, but this amp is tube powered. I don't really know what to make of it, because it can do jazz, but if you try and turn it up too much, that tube kicks in and it starts breaking up, which is what you'd expect from a tube amp, unless it's really powerful like my AC30, which I do use for jazz and it's much better. But I'm sure you want to hear some sound clips, so I've got my Les Paul with me here, and I'm just going to play over just take a solo onto a couple of jazz standards and see what you think of the amp. Let's go. Right, so having listened to those, I think you'll ascertain that it sounds quite good. And the reason it sounds good is because I'm working it at a relatively low volume, which means that the tubes aren't quite working as hard to produce the scrunchy, overdriven sound, which is what most people want out of a tube amp. In this case, I'm trying to get a nice, clean, smooth sound, and it's delivering that very well at a low volume. But the reason you could hear it presumably so loudly as I am is because I'm miking it up pretty close to the amp. You see, if I just do that, my microphone's just there and my amp's just there, which isn't all that brilliant if you're then playing live and you need to project it, because the people who you're playing for don't have the means to mic your amp up. For instance, if I were to put my amp at the other end of the room and crank it, I don't think you'd hear an awful lot of that nice clean sound that we'd be looking for. In fact, I'll do that right now. Right, as you could hear in that clip, the amp was cranking a tiny bit. It was at about half volume, it was just starting to break up, but believe me, that wasn't particularly loud on my end of things. And I played a concert the other day and I had to bring my big amp because in the rehearsal this little amp simply couldn't cope with it. And it was just distorting and crackling and it was just making the band sound bad, so I brought my big amp, which worked fine. But I was talking a lot about how I think it was orientated around to the crunch side of things, and so I'm just going to play probably a little rock and roll lick, and then I'm going to move on to something a bit more glammy, and then something a bit more high gain, and we'll see how the amp copes with that. I think it might sound a bit better than the jazz, so yeah, let's get on with it. Certainly from my side of things, that seemed to work a lot better. The amp just seemed to have a bit more of the natural flair that I want if I'm playing rock and roll, which it doesn't really do for the jazz more. But now I'm going to move on to something that could be considered like proper rock music, not just rock and roll. So let's get on with that. And I'm sure you'll start noticing something of a recurring theme here, because I think that sounded pretty good on my end. But the microphone might be distorting a bit too much for you to pick it up really well. I can't think of a method to accurately mic everything up without it distorting a bit, so I'm sorry for that. But let's move on to something heavy, like proper heavy. So we'll see how that goes. This should be fun. to ask, yes, I know, I was using a 7-string instead of my Les Paul, because why not? But actually, while you're sitting there deliberating about things, I think this sounds a bit flabby. I think right at the bottom, right when you get all the way down to the tritones, right at the bottom of the guitar, it just sounds a bit just thin and flabby. I think the strings are really, really quite thin. That might not help with that. I'd need to get a proper set of strings strung up, and you can also see it's only a 5-string at the moment. My friend broke some of the strings fooling around with it. So, yeah. I think we're going to be giving this one a little bit of a put back on the bed. And I think it didn't actually cope that well for the metal, the amp. I'm actually going to put this down to the amp more than the guitar, because I've played just trying to play some drop E heavy stuff. And though it sounded tighter, this guitar's pretty nice, so I'm not going to put it down to the guitar when it sounds flabby in E. I think the amp just lacks a bit of clarity. I think maybe the sound needs needs some compression. Don't have a compressor pedal, which is a shame. But overall, I think this amp's actually okay. And actually, it's just occurred to me you can probably hear the buzzing of the cable. That should be better. Overall, I think this amp's actually pretty good, because it serves its purpose. It does everything, some things more so than others, and something less so than others. And I put this amp at a pretty solid 8 out of 10. Just because it makes up for what it lacks in the jazz department by being really good at like that sort of 80s, 70s, late 60s sort of thing. Which pretty much rounds up the end of the video. Hope you enjoyed it. This took quite a long time to make. I've been recording footage for about half an hour. But show your support and appreciation, please. I'm so happy we've hit 30 subscribers. That sounds really cringy to say, but 30 subscribers, let's keep it going. Hope you enjoyed it. Goodbye.